you can get if you do a really good job, or if you want that assignment, then you get it. That was one of the issues that they struggled with, was that there was really no like rules, or it just seemed like it was based on, oh, I like you, so you get this easy job sort of thing. So maybe you just lay it out objectively and you say, if you do a good job, I'll let you do what you want to do.
I think the reward thing, I think gratitude, I think you're right, Tamara, I think goes a long way, as long as we're patient with the response, because I think, you know, it takes people a little while sometimes to soak in the little bit of change, to realize that you are being genuine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people have a little bit harder shell than others. So like, even with my kids, realizing that, you know, kind of, it's important to have realistic expectations, because however altruistic some of the stuff we read and write about is, you know, in a perfect situation, this would be the best solution. You know, the reality is, if I feel genuinely grateful for someone's effort, thank you for sharing what you shared. That in itself has got to be enough. And then anything on top of that's got to be icing. Oh, they responded to that. That's great. You know, I'm still going to be genuine. I'm still going to be honest. But I can't always expect people to respond in an expected way, like we read in our dysfunctions book. Now, the dysfunctions book is interesting partly because, you know, there is some altruism going on, and you know, and this is how I handled it, and this is how she handled it, and yes, these people are doing this, but I know how to perfectly build a team, and that's great. You know, to kind of see how in a situation of a really ideal team builder works on things. You know, the reality is, you know, people lose their jobs, people get mad, someone's, you know, writes you up and or complains to management, you find out that you didn't make changes fast enough and you're out of a job, no matter how highly motivated you were to make a good team. You know, so kind of being, you know, I don't know, that makes, I don't know, when you write up these cases and I think, how do I find them personally applicable? I mean, in the end, you'd have to live with yourself and know that you did your best, and that's not always an easy road. We are going to go ahead and close up with any closing thoughts. I don't know, Jace, why don't we start with you and what your thoughts are on this case and its kind of personal application?
So one of the things I really noticed was, if you get put into a place that seems rough and then you get the motivation, well, I can do this. I feel like I have the tools necessary to solve it. I feel like I can make it better. I realized that sometimes it might feel like it's getting worse before it gets better, because I feel like Norris got in there and she felt the same way. She felt she had the tools. She felt like she had the passion. She was in the right place. She wanted a new challenge, but it seems like it's getting worse, and that might hurt, you know, our egos a little bit when we feel like, you know, why do I feel like I'm doing wrong when I feel like it's getting worse? But we talked a lot about patience. We talked about the benefits of how if things seem like they're getting bad, it's productive because they're voicing their opinions. They're getting their truth out. So I just noticed that there are some times where even though you feel like you might not be doing a good job, that you are actually making it productive. And that's the only thing that matters, is progress. And sometimes it requires patience. Sometimes there are things you can't control. And you just have to pull the levers that you know how. And I think that really applies to what I'm doing, because I'm going to work on a project for my internship at the university next semester. And I kind of have I always have my high expectations for myself. And then naturally, since the high expectations are too high, you kind of feel burnout a little bit. So I know that I'm going to be able to manage my expectations a little better.
Thanks, Jace. What about you, Tim?
I was just thinking, she's on the right track as far as putting some of the responsibility back on her nursing staff. In my human resource management class, we were talking about that if people can start taking personal responsibility, you tend to have a better change that comes along, because then there's no one to blame. If she goes in and just says, this is what we're going to do, this is the way it's going to happen, they can always come back and say, well, it's your fault that it didn't happen, and you should have done this, and you should have done that. With her going in and saying, okay, this is what it is, and you need to start helping me out and start taking responsibility for yourself, then there's less chance of her being blamed. And so I think she's on the right track, getting everybody together to help with to dish out the responsibility to other people, so they can start saying, hey, you know, I see this problem here, and I have a good solution that I think might work.
Thanks. I like what Jace mentioned about sometimes things get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
I've tried to teach my children a little bit about repentance with this, that, you know, they call Christ the great physician. And one thing that he knows is that in order to heal, the wound must be cleaned. And the cleaning of a wound, for anyone who's ever had a wound, it doesn't feel good when you're scraping the rocks out of the road rash and you're pouring peroxide on it or whatever, and it stings and it hurts. But ultimately, if we allow ourselves to go through the pain of the healing has more lasting value. We don't just end up with some, you know, pussy scab that, you know, oh, look, it's healed because you know, it's no longer raw, it must be healed, but we leave things festering, and we need to allow that. And that was kind of my explanation to them about why sometimes repentance hurts and why we sometimes avoid it, is because we have to go through some pain in order to be healed, and that the process is true, and it's a pure process. And that, and the same thing here, that sometimes it's going to hurt before it gets better, and if we can be patient and have, you know, run with true principles, even if altruistically it doesn't work out and you end up not having a job, there's still great value in sustaining sound principles, and chances are that you will win out, and it's good to stay your ground even when things don't quite seem to be going the way that you would like them, kind of like that expectation thing. That's my thought anyway. Trevor, you want to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. I actually, while listening to everyone's thoughts and thinking about, you know, the case as a whole, I had the allegory of the olive tree pop into my head. Kind of a strange thing because I hadn't read that for a few months, but they do talk about how some of the branches that produce horrible fruit or don't produce good fruit are going to eventually be cut off and stacked all together and then thrown into the fire. And I think that pruning and that cutting away of the bad growth is a part of this kind of business decision or application. I think that there are going to be people who would be fired if they don't, you know, hop on board with the new initiative to try and get everything back up on a functional level. And I think people will, you know, they'll fall away. They'll want to jump ship. And I think that that's an interesting allegory there, because it's not only applicable in the gospel sense but also in a business sense. Like, I'm thinking about how this would work if Barbara was in charge of making sure that this olive tree here was producing good fruit. It's not, okay, what do I need to do? Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to downsize it and graft in some new branches and bring some new blood in. Okay, so be it. And so I think it just, you know, continues on from that point. That was just one of my thoughts, what popped into my head.
I really like that, especially with when you graft in, you get to choose the grafts.
Mm-hmm.
You get to hand pick. He didn't just grab any graft. He's like, I want this one and this one. And again, part of the process of the pain, I guess, and you hope that people will trust you in that process. So anyway, well, thanks, guys. Sorry to make last week's meeting crazy, and I'm glad, you know, this one felt productive. I just looked down halfway through the meeting, and somehow the broadcast had stopped, so I restarted it. I don't know what happened. I don't know that they could stop. But anyway, so our meeting, but I think we'll probably still be okay. I'll just post the meeting on the thing and mention that part of it didn't get recorded. So
That'll be good.
anyway,
Thank you.
yep. Is anybody traveling for the holiday, or are you guys sticking at home?
Yep.
Sticking at home.
Staying here.
Yep.
Traveling with Boise.
All right. Well, have a good week, you guys.
Yeah,
You
you
too.
too.
Thanks, you too.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.